Why am I getting a very strong Iron-Blooded Orphans vibe from this series? And that legitimately scares me, because I love Iron-Blooded Orphans, and that series literally grabbed my heart out of my chest, like, while it was still beaten, and just punched it continuously, because that series hit like a truck. And when I look at this episode of 86, that's all I see. I see the incoming truck, or the death flag, right in front of me, and I'm like, oh no, this is gonna be bad. Something really bad's gonna happen. A character I love is just gonna just straight up die. This series is gonna hurt, isn't it? It's gonna hurt. I can feel it. I can feel it coming from a mile away. It's not really trying to hide it, especially with the whole box at the beginning of the episode with the Undertaker and how he opened it up and you see all the tags of everyone that's died around him. So just like, yeah, it's very clear that even if the Undertaker doesn't die, our main male character, at least probably until the end of the series, everyone around him is probably gonna die. And I'm scared of that. I really am. Like, oh my, I already see it, and it's gonna hurt. Oh man, we're in for a ride. We're definitely, or at least me, I know for a fact I'm in for a ride when it comes to this 86 anime, because just like, I loved Iron Blood Orphans. Getting a vibe like that instantly makes me fall in love with this series. I want to know more. It was like my first Gundam series. This is my first real mech series I gave a shot, and then now I'm watching this. It's just great. It's great to have those same vibes of the very series that got me into this type of genre of anime. But anyway, so this episode of 86 really gives us a lot to think about. One of the biggest details is the fact that the people that are actually on the front lines and fighting, they are actually human. So they're not AI, they're not aliens, they're not a mutation or people that failed to mutate. They literally are just regular human beings. And the reason why they're on the front lines and being counted as no casualties, no fatalities or whatever, is because the people that are behind the battlefield, the ones controlling everything, giving them the locations of the opponents they're fighting, they basically designated all those out there on the front lines as less than human. They're not even human. And it's really messed up. I had a suspicion maybe something was like that when you look at just the entire way the first episode was presented. Everything about it really, spoke about authoritarian government, etc. And when you just look at that, it's just like, yeah, you can see it. You legitimately could just see it coming. But even then, though, just to have it said really does just make you look at everything and wonder where the story's going to go from this point forward. Because now we have multiple directions the story's going to go. Number one, when we look at everything, most likely the grand scheme of things when it comes to the story is probably going to be about our main female character trying to have the people that's a part of the 86th district to actually have rights and be able to actually be counted as casualties, be remembered, etc. I feel like that's probably the major in-game goal of the story. Another thing, though, is about this legion that apparently the Republic is fighting. This legion is mostly just AI from what we can see. Highly advanced robots, and I'll talk more about that in a second. But basically, apparently, this legion might have wiped out their creators, and so they've just been walking around for years now, and they'll eventually deactivate after 6 years, and there's only 2 years left, which explains the time frame of why the Republic thinks that, their victory is assured in a few years. So this is all making a lot of sense now. The question, though, is the Legion really gone, or is it really just AI being controlled and moving around? There's a lot of questions. There's still a lot of mysteries of whatever's going on the outside of where 86 is, and also the Republic and all that. We don't really know much more, but there clearly is something a lot bigger going on in the world than just this small little war between these two opposing countries. But diving back into, the people that are part of District 86, they're very fascinating, because now we know why they act like they do, why they seem very calloused, and the entire, conversation at the end of the episode when, the handler, our main female character, starts talking to the Undertaker, and is like, oh, be careful and all that, you guys are gonna retire in a few years, and they're like, oh, you're so young. She's like, I'm the same year as you, and the way they acted showed that they were very callous, they were very matured, or they were aged, because they've seen so much on the battlefield that you can no longer count them as young anymore because of just what they've had to go go through. So I do enjoy that aspect, showing that level of how even though they might be considered like young, they're not really young mentally anymore because of just everything they've had to go through. But then we also have the stuff with the robots, which I want to dive now into that. So we get to see a major, distinct difference between the Republic's AI or robots and also the Legion's robots that we saw our main force fighting within this episode. It's very clear if you really look at it that the Legion's forces are superior in every way. The technology, just the way the infrastructure of the actual robots look just so much better. They look like they perform a lot better, and they really are, no manned. Like, they're not manned at all. They can go and fight without anyone piloting them. But when you look at the Republic's forces, the 86th district, they have to man their little mechs, which puts them in a lot of danger, obviously. But on top of that, there is a lot of gaps. It's a very old unit. You could see them constantly complaining about it right when the fight is about to start. So it does show that the equipment they're equipped with isn't really up to standards to be able to face the opponents they are. So this does give credit to the fact that maybe the Legion is just running on autopilot without anyone controlling them, and they will definitely deactivate in a few years, because if they were being controlled, it's very clear that most likely the Republic would have lost. That's what I'm definitely getting from that entire battle scene, is that the Republic was definitely pushed back against a wall and literally was probably going to get wiped out. And so they made a desperate maneuver to conscript, soldiers to fight on the front line to deal with it, and that's what they did with, the individuals that don't have silver hair and blue eyes. So I find that interesting. It does lead to maybe some of the decisions of why they did it, but it doesn't mean it's right. But there is a lot of world building going on with this episode, kind of explaining that the Republic isn't really that superior. Their technology isn't as good, or at least they've gotten lazy now, because maybe they might have the technology now, but they don't do it because there's no reason to innovate. Like, it's kind of like, I know it's a little bit morbid in a way, but it's kind of like, to compare to what's going on the front lines, but you know how competition breeds, innovation. It makes it to where a product can get better and excel and go somewhere even beyond what its once originating point was. And technically, you can look at the combat between these two opposing countries in a very similar way. You had it to where most likely the reason why Legion developed to the point it was probably because it was at war with individuals. And then, you had vice versa for the Republic. And obviously, the Republic, if they were still really fighting a battle with Legion, if they had actual people controlling behind the scenes, they might have tried to really upgrade the machines that they're using, but it seems like they haven't chose to do that because there's no reason to. There's no reason to when, number one, they don't care about the people on the front lines. Number two, they're just fighting a time game. That's all they're doing. They're just waiting it out, and eventually they win. So they don't need to upgrade. They just need to stall long enough, and everything is a-okay. So I do find this very fascinating, honestly. I do enjoy what this episode presents, and I cannot wait to see the direction it's going to go, which that's the next thing to talk about. So as I've already stated about the 86th district, all the individuals that are not considered technically human, we got to look at the culture and history inside of the Republic and what they're actually doing. So we get a brief scene with our main female character kind of confronting these new recruitees about everything that is going on, everything that is happening behind the scenes, and basically how or what they're doing with the people on the front lines and how they're not being considered as casualties, etc. And she makes her entire point, showcasing the desperate measures they've taken to do what they're doing right now. And she tries to tell all these recruitees, like, when you join, this is technically what's happening here. We could definitely change this for the better to make it at least where we can honor those that have died on the front lines. Then you have a few students that speak up in front of the class and are like, oh, they're not really human, they failed to evolve. And it's very clear that there's a lot of indoctrination and propaganda that has been slipped into their society to where those that are a part of the community, recruitees, etc., people that are going to school, they don't really have, like, the proper understanding. They've been fed this one narrative over and over their entire life, and so it doesn't matter what someone says to them. They've literally been brainwashed to that point. Regardless if someone points out the truth to them, they won't believe it because, once again, they have literally been brainwashed since a young age. You could see there was even a police officer sitting in the classroom that didn't allow the teacher to actually say anything. He was very strict. You could see the way the teacher was acting. He was constantly walking on eggshells to try to say what was going on in history to make it seem like everything was a-okay. So I do think that we're getting to see a lot of how the society works in this series and kind of what went wrong, obviously, and how it can potentially be corrected, which this leads into the next point. If I had to assume where the series is going to go after this episode, I'm going to assume that our handler, the main female character, she's probably going to be exiled to the 86th district, because we do get to see someone with silver hair and blue eyes right next to the Undertaker, and I was just like, wait a minute, whoa, like, that means that they can be exiled. But number two, we know for a fact that our main female character's father died. We don't know the true reasons for it, but basically we can now assume the reason why he probably died is because of the line we got in the previous episode, and that was that he had to be silenced. He was probably, advocating for the 86th district to be counted as people, etc., and he was silenced for it. It's very clear that's probably what's going to happen eventually to our MC if she doesn't tone it down, which eventually either she's going to be killed or exiled. We'll see where that one's going to go. But I do wonder what else is going on outside of this, war. What's happening around the world? How does people feel about everything? A lot of questions I have, but this is a really good series. I'm loving it so far, and I see now why so many hyped it up. It really has everything that I want from an anime, and I can't wait to see what's going to happen next. So I'm going to leave it at that. I love you guys. You have a wonderful day or night wherever you live. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe. If you like this video, please leave a like. And if you want to get notified for whenever I upload a video, please click the bell icon down below. And with that, Chibi out.